Hey y'all, it's Gabby Beckford, Gen Z travel influencer, opportunity expert, and host of the Young Travelers podcast. Each week, I share stories of 20-something adventurers that have opted out of the status quo, live life for the plot, and will inspire you to travel while you're young too. This week, I want to talk about solo traveling while we're young. It's dangerous, it's scary, it's lonely, right? Why do it at all, especially as broke and inexperienced as we are in our 20s? That's what we're talking about today, so let's tap into that convo. So first, let's talk about what is solo travel. I think this is somewhat of a contentious subject in the travel community, even though it sounds like it wouldn't be. What is solo travel? Traveling alone, right? But if you go on a group trip where you don't know anybody, is that still solo travel? If you go to a different country by yourself but make friends as soon as you land there, and now you have a group of friends that like you get lunch with or you go on an activity with, is that still solo travel? That's the discrepancy we're seeing in the definition of solo travel. And I'm here to set the record straight today. All of that is solo travel. Because the truth is, solo travel is not about being isolated. It's not called isolated travel. It's about being solo. It's about the novelty of going somewhere and not knowing the people around you. It doesn't really matter if you're on the group trip with them, like you're staying in the same hotel versus you're like, I don't know, staying in a hut alone in the woods. Solo travel is when you are getting yourself out of your comfort zone by not relying on people that you already have in your life, period. That's the definition. Solo travel means you're traveling with someone you don't know. Usually for me, it is alone though. To be fair, I like solo travel because I get to be alone. And by being alone, I get to reinvent myself. I think that's actually the big appeal of solo travel, which we'll kind of get into later. My story of solo travel is that I have solo traveled to more than 20 plus countries in my 20s. Japan, Thailand, the UAE, Jordan, Mexico, Poland, Germany, more. I love solo traveling. That's why I'm doing this podcast episode. That's why I brand myself a solo female traveler, because I love it so much and I think it brings so much enrichment to my life. Why do people solo travel? Like I said, I think it enriches my life, but other people use it more as a utility. They travel solo because they have to, because they want to go on that bucket list trip to Paris, but no one is down. Like the group chat is not responding. If you don't go now, when will you go? That's how a lot of people feel when they solo travel, not because they desperately want to get away from their friends or because they want to be alone or they want to have their eat, pray, love, which is very valid. But a lot of people need to solo travel if they want to get off the ground, if they want to book the flight. So I think that's half of it. Half of it is utility. Half of it is more like me. It's a journey of self-discovery. It's building confidence. People want to find their freedom. People want to break the mental limitations or like emotional limitations that they've had in the identity of who they were before. And I know that kind of just jumped into like woo-woo, like, wait, are we good? But hear me out. When you are born, let's say in a small town, when you grow up, people expect you to say, oh, you're the quiet sibling. Oh, you're the loud sibling. You're the smart kid. You're the problem child. You have all these identities kind of placed on you, and it's hard to break out of them. That's why a lot of people who want to be stars go to LA. It's not necessarily because it's LA, it's because it's not home, right? You get to reinvent yourself once you break out of who you're supposed to be. You get to become who you're meant to be or who you could be once you break out of other people's limitations of who you're supposed to be. And that's what solo travel does to me. My first solo trip was when I was 17 years old. At 17, I had that impulse. I had that, I need an adventure. I need something to shake up the system. Like it was a red pill, blue pill moment. I was like, something in my life needs to change now or I'm going to keep going on the trajectory of which I've been going and I don't like it. Not that I hated my life, but it just wasn't all that I could be. I felt like I was living someone else's life or that my life was right over there, the life I'd be happy with, fulfilled with. Yeah, that it was just right there, but it was behind a door. And I was like, okay, well, I'm opening doors. I'm like, what is that door? Is it getting a bunch of scholarships to college? Is it applying to an Ivy League? Is it like, what is the door that's going to make me fulfilled? And then I tried this one, solo travel at 17, like I said. I begged my parents, please. There's a trip I found to Iceland. It was a group trip, but like I would travel over there solo and I would spend time in Reykjavik solo. And then once we get out into the wilderness, I'd meet up with a bunch of random people I'd never met before. So again, to me, that's a solo trip. And so, yeah, I do not even know to this day how my parents agreed. A lot of begging. I think I did do a PowerPoint presentation to my dad because he was a lot more strict at the time. And yeah, I think I asked my grandma for some help with the flight, like financing it. But I saved up all my money, blew all the savings I had because something told me that this solo trip would change my life. Not necessarily in like, I'm gonna meet the love of my life or I'm gonna like break my leg or like just anything that dramatic, but I just knew it would shift the frequency. That's what solo travel is, a frequency shift, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a Black woman. I feel like we have a lot of identities placed on us. We are at the intersection of a lot of identities. To break out of all of that as much as you can and say, who do I want to be? That's what you get to do on a solo trip. And again, that's what I did on my solo trip. So the long and short of it is that I went to this backpacking trip in Iceland completely unprepared. Like, it was bad, guys. Like, I share this story. I've done a few long threads about it. I should do a YouTube video about it, but this podcast is where I want to share it in its entirety first. When I landed in Reykjavik, I was so alarmed. And this is 2013, by the way. So none of those WowWare flights were happening. Like, no one had, like, it was not a popular travel destination quite yet, but I knew it was really safe. And that's why I chose to go to it solo. Like, statistically, I looked it up and Iceland was the #1 safest country in the world. And from Virginia to Iceland, I'm like, okay, it's not that far. Like, this makes sense. I should do it. Reykjavik was fine. There was a culture shock being around Icelandic people that I was like, just from being from the US. And everyone's not as friendly as I thought, or the customer service was really standard and not like above and beyond like America teaches you or the South teaches you. I was the only Black person I think I saw on the entire trip, which says something. I don't even think I want to say I didn't really see any other races. It was white people, locals, and the group I was with that I ended up with, backpackers, were all white too. I was the only person of color, period, on my backpacking trip. And I was the youngest, by the way. By the time we got out there into Lagavega, I think, or Landmannalaga is like the name of the area or the trail, I realized that I was the only person of color. I think there was equal women and men, but I was the youngest person there by 5 years. Like, I was 17, the next person was 21 maybe, or 22. And then there was like a 45-year-old. So I was like, I'm so out of my depth. I was unprepared mentally. I was unprepared physically. After the first day, I was trailing in the back for the rest of the days. I was huffing and puffing. There were days I went to bed crying. There were days I went to bed shivering because I didn't pack right. I actually didn't pack a sleeping bag at all. At all. I don't know why I thought someone else would bring one for me. I wasn't even thinking I was in that much of a survival crisis mode. I didn't have a sleeping bag. I had to share a sleeping bag with one of the other very kind souls on the trip, back to back in a one-person sleeping bag for 6 days. And that trip was so beautiful and it was so awful. Like, I think that's a misconception that's really popular, is that my solo trip is going to be eat, pray, love. I'm going to go on it. There's going to be like a few snags, but ultimately I'm going to reach nirvana. No, I was so miserable. I was cold. I was ran ragged. I was eating beans out of a can. I was in blistering wind, scorching deserts. I was not having fun. I hated it maybe, but you'd get to moments of reflection. It would be midnight and I'd be trying to sleep and I'd be writing in my journal. And I'd say, how do I feel right now? And despite like, I could make a laundry list of stuff I wanted to complain about. At the very bottom of it, it was like, do you want to go home? No. I want to be here. Something's happening here. That's how it felt. Something's happening to me. And it's not just the frostbite. It's August, by the way. So it wasn't even like the coldest Iceland can get. But it was still chilly and like really windy and really like just intense elements. Crossing a river, just like taking my shoes off, rolling up my pants and crossing icy rivers. It was intense for a 17-year-old. And I remember thinking, as bad as it is, each day gets easier. And the first day was great. It was like this. First day was great. Second day was rough. Third day was rough. Fourth day was okay. Fifth day, I was maybe in the middle of the pack. I wasn't at the back anymore. And by the sixth day, I was busted, tired, like run ragged, but I was like, I would do it again. The dopamine release, the sense of accomplishment, the friends I made along the way, really the sense of accomplishment looking back at like the 40 kilometers we did and me being 17 and saying, I did that. It was hard, but I did it. That lesson that sunk into my brain has carried me so far in life. So far. It's hard, but I can do it. And I could even have fun when it's hard. And it being hard doesn't mean I shouldn't do it. It means that I probably should do it if I really want it. Like, it's a test of how bad I want it. And I want it bad. I want freedom bad. I want adventure bad. I want new friends bad. I want to test my limitations real bad. That's what I want. And from that solo trip stemmed really immediately a lot of growth in my life. So I was 17, then I went to college, right? Spring break, I didn't do in Miami, I did it in Puerto Rico. Spring break, sophomore year, I didn't do it in Miami or PCB, I went to London and Thailand. And I could take bigger steps because I had a little foundation of, okay, I could do it. And so that's to me the benefit of solo travel when you're young. That's how solo travel can change your life, is that it's just a stepping stone of confidence and curiosity. And it's a tool in your belt now that you have to take you further in life. Confidence, adaptability, trusting your intuition, social skills, even professional growth. I think that there's so much to learn from solo travel. And so when you're in your 20s, it doesn't really matter at all if you're in your early 20s or late 20s and you're listening to this. If you haven't solo traveled yet, consider it. This is probably the year to do it, I would say, because there's no better time to say, who do I want to be? Or who could I be? If I let go of what everyone else said I had to be, who do I want to be? So yeah, if you're in your 20s, think about it. It might just change your life too. If you enjoyed the podcast episode, give me a follow literally wherever you're listening. And also please drop a review. What did you like? More importantly, what did you learn? It really helps me, but more importantly, it helps other future adventurers get inspired by stories. And if you want to travel, but don't know really where to start, I got you. Go to packsite.com for tons of info and resources to get you from traveling one day to day one. And P.S., if you liked this podcast, you should check out Circa. Circa has podcast guides that cover hundreds of destinations for your next big adventure. Learn more by heading to cercatravel.com. Chat soon. Mwah.